Don Henley released 5 studio solo albums, and the first 3 are arguably his best. I Can't Stand Still came out in 1982. That one went gold. 2 years later, it was Building the Perfect Beast, which went triple platinum, and it was 6 times platinum for The End of the Innocents in 1989. Inside Job came out in 2000, then Cass County in 2015. Of course, Don Henley spent most of his time with the Eagles, but when he was recording, he didn't fool around. When I interviewed Randy Meisner in 2000, he told me as an Eagle, he found that Don Henley was his stickler. But then in the same breath, he says, well, he is Don Henley. He gets things done and gets it done right. This is part of our interview with Steve Porcaro, who worked with Don Henley on I Can't Stand Still and Building the Perfect Beast. In this one, we talk about The Boys of Summer, arguably his best song ever. Co-written by Mike Campbell of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, who was in the studio with Steve Porcaro of Toto. First, a little on Steve, and then we get to the interview on Rock History Music. He wasn't the loudest Porcaro brother, but his imprint is all over pop and rock. Before Toto even had a hit, Steve Porcaro was on the road with Gary Wright on the famous Dreamweaver tour. Then he got a call from Boz Scaggs to join up on the Silk Degrees tour. There he was, skipping high school and learning how to sculpt songs. Some of the sounds that would later make Toto very famous. By the mid-70s, he was back in LA, helping to form the band alongside his brother Jeff Porcaro on drums, Bobby Kimball on vocals, Steve Lukather on guitar, keyboardist David Page, and bassist David Hungate. Together, they became Studio Elite, the band every producer called when perfection mattered. On the band's biggest album from 1982, Toto 4, Steve Porcaro shimmered through some great tunes. Rosanna, named after his then-girlfriend, Rosanne Arquette. Africa. There were 6 singles on Toto 4 and 4 hits. The other 2, Make Believe and I Won't Hold You Back. Waiting for Your Love was also released, and Afraid of Love. And let's not forget their debut album had a big hit as well, with Hold the Line. In 1978, Toto 4 won 6 Grammys, but his real magic kind of reached beyond that band. When Michael Jackson needed a tender, otherworldly ballad for Thriller, he and producer Quincy Jones picked Steve Porcaro's Human Nature. He co-wrote that one. It's still one of the most haunting songs that Michael Jackson has ever released. And when Don Henley was carving out his own career in the 80s, there was Steve Porcaro right there on his very first hit, Dirty Laundry. And on his second record, Building the Perfect Beast, The Boys of Summer, All She Wants to Do Is Dance. Steve left Toto as a full-time member after the 7th one in the late 80s. He still toured with them and he still appeared on albums. But he wanted to do more. He wanted to write more. He got involved in film and TV. The latter's best example would be the series Justified. We lost his drumming legend brother Jeff Porcaro in 1992, and bassist Mike Porcaro, who joined the band after Toto 4, we lost him in 2015. But it's Steve Porcaro keeping the family name going. And remember, the Porcaro brothers are sons of the famous Joe Porcaro, who's worked with Frank Sinatra and some of the biggest names in the industry. He was a great drummer as well. That's some pretty good DNA. Steve released his first solo album in 2016 called Someday Somehow. And his new one is called The Very Day, which is available now.
They had finished Boys of Summer, and Henley wanted the song was done, recorded, finished. They were just doing the lead vocal. And I kid you not, Henley decided he wanted it up 1/2 step. Like say if they recorded the song in the key of C,
all right,
he wanted it to be C sharp.
Right.
Not even a whole step, not even from C to D. He wanted it up 1/2 step. And they wanted to know if I had some magic box that could transpose the whole track. Now, we do have those magic boxes now. You know what I mean? We can. Ableton Live, as a matter of fact, we talked about that earlier. That has this great transpose thing where the voice doesn't get munchkin-y or whatever. I use it just for that. But there really was no way to do it then. So while they're talking about it, it was a drum machine based song. Boys of Summer was all done with drum machine. And so while the way I remember it, now again, some other people may beg to differ, but while everyone was out of the room, we were just left set up in there. And I had I had my Oberheim OB8 in there. And I was with Mike Campbell, the co-writer of the song. We just re-recorded it. We got the drum machine going, and I just played the song a half step higher. The ba da boom ba da do 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 do.
So that's you.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah. Now I wasn't the original guy on it. I was the guy they brought in when they wanted it up a half step, thinking I just had some magic box. I had some magic box that could make it go up a half step. I just waited till everyone was out of the room, and we just replayed the whole song up a half step. With the guitar player, with the co-writer of the song, and the drum machine going, and recorded it with the second engineer. I don't even think LaDonnie was in the room at the time. We just were left set up, and we just did it. Now then they brought in Pino Palladino to do fretless bass, and and it was in the key Don wanted it to be in.
I've got a picture here with you and James Newton Howard. How far back do you go with him?
James, I remember hearing about him getting the gig with Elton John, when Elton John added a keyboard player. I think I even read it in Variety or something like that. When Elton was expanding his band.
Rock of the Westies, yeah.
You know what I mean? And all that. But then soon after, he became a friend. We started seeing him in the studio. We all were working with Richard Perry together at Studio 55, where we first worked. As a matter of fact, James just reached out to me, reminded me, we were saying, which one was our first thing? Bill Schnee had hired James to do synth on a Pablo Cruz thing, and I had just gotten my CS80, which I was using on all the Toto stuff, and James had me come do that. But I think even before that, he produced Valerie Carter. He produced a Valerie Carter album, and I think he reminded me, this song Crazy, I did a synth solo on and stuff like that, and he reminded me, I think that was our first session together.
Getting some really, really nice buzz for this record.
It feels great. My thing is that you got to understand, and people think I'm being modest when I say some of this stuff, but I just could never, whether it was scoring a TV show or being on the road with Toto, to do that and write songs. I mean, Luke can do it. Luke can come home and he writes a song in 2 hours. He's done writing a song. Boom. And he goes to the studio and he does it and he cuts the track and he's out of there. He's that good and he's that fast and he's that talented. For me, I love tweaking. I love fiddling with this stuff. I love trying something, experimenting. It's all so much fun to me, but especially if I wanted to be healthy and be a human being to my family and to my personal relationship, and my mom was still alive. I mean, that was the main reason I needed to get off the road. My dad was getting real sick. My son was struggling. I needed to be home and be a human being. And I can't do both. I can't then. It's not like I was able to. I mean, I had plenty of friends that could sit there and they were doing big movies or a TV show and they could work 9 to 5. Then they'd go in and have dinner with their family and be a good husband and then come back out afterwards and work on their songs. Dude, when I had a TV show, it was 24/7. Bring me a sandwich. I got to keep going. The weekend, forget it. I got to get this done. Real threes do. It would own me.
You said that about Justified. That's one of the reasons yeah.
All of them were like that.
Really?
Every film score I did was like that. I just wasn't, John, yes, some cool things came out of it, but it just wasn't my lane. Do you know what I'm talking about? I would see guys. I got to see guys like James Newton Howard, friends, and I would see them in the studio. I would see them writing. I would see them, and movie music would just pour out of them. Just as fast as they could play it, they'd write some brilliant stuff. And if the director made them do it again, they'd go, sure, I'll do that 7-minute cue again, no problem. And I'd be like, it would be so hard for me to get one version right. You know what I mean? It was, and it owned me. It owned me. It was day and night just to get it done. It's not like, okay, now it's the weekend, let's write songs. No, I needed to spend some time with my kids because they hadn't seen me for a week. You know what I mean? They hadn't seen me for 5 days because daddy was busy working. Everyone always ran interference. So, and I want to show for all the Toto fans that have given me so much love over the year and loved me back playing with the band. This is why I'm not just touring with them and whatever, is that I get to do this now. This is what it's like. Believe me, I know you'd love for me to be on all these tours and taking all these bows like I did for 9 years there. But you know what? This is really what you want me doing. If you're truly a fan of mine, you know what I mean? You want me finishing these songs, you know what I mean? And they're going to see how, whereas my last album was 9 effing years ago, okay, my next album will be, one in a year or 2 at the most. I've already got the next album's halfway done. Mixed, okay, because this is all I do now. I am so blessed that I don't have to do a TV show. I don't have to go on the road, and I want to show everybody. That it's not just me being self-indulgent. That I'm liking how these things are coming out when I'm embracing this new way that we work, and with everybody everyone in their home studios and stuff.
Change was with Michael McDonald. So that's an old song that from before, and it was Michael Jackson. Was it presented to Michael Jackson?
You never heard it. No. I had written 3 things. I had 3 starts. I had 3 separate things. And Mike Sherwood, my songwriting partner at the time, he came in and he was like, dude, all 3 of these things. He scattered a little idea on all 3 of them, and with the idea to pitch them to Michael as starts for Michael or something we would eventually finish for Michael. And, just the lyric concept, a lot of the melody on Change. And that was one that I just was like, you know what? I need to finish this,
Wasn't that 2 weeks before Michael passed that you'd finished it or something?
Something like that. You know what I mean?
Right up his alley.
Yeah, right. Lyrically and everything, it was really solid. It wasn't the usual word salad from me. You know what I mean? It was a real Julius Robinson also was Mike's go-to guy. Michael Sherwood's go-to guy to help with lyrics. So that's the 3 of us on there. But Mike and Julius did the lyrics. I kind of did everything else.
Did you ever hang out with Timothy Oliphant?
No. I went down. Season 2. I read the script to the first show of season 2, and it was taking place in a tent revival. It was this young guy who him and his sister had a traveling revival tent thing. Jesus Bible thumping thing, and in the tent was the band, was the band, you know what I mean? And so I called up the producers and said, hey, how about me and Mark Bonilla and my nephew Chase? I go, how about if we're the band? Wanting to be part of it. So I got to see Timothy, and I met him, and I would meet him at like rap parties and whatever. I never really hung with him at all. I'm a huge fan of him as an actor. You know what I mean? I love him as an actor. But and by the way, there was like the stupidest thing I ever did in my life. They were filming like up by Magic Mountain, up in the hills, try to find somewhere in Southern California that looks like Kentucky. You know what I mean? The closest they could come was up in these hills here, and it was freezing. And we couldn't be wearing, this had to be like, it was like a tent revival thing in the summer. So we had to I couldn't be wearing a sweater, you know what I mean? And it's taking forever. And I'm going, what was I thinking? You know what I mean? I always loathed making videos. I loathed when I would go with friends to their movie sets, watching a movie being made. Nothing could be worse,
Paint dry. Yeah.
Watching me work as far as it being like drying paint. Who would want to watch me editing, you know what I'm saying, on a computer? It's like, it couldn't be more boring. And okay, it took us 2 hours to light that shot. Now let's get the two shot. Everyone take a 3 hour break. And it's like, what? You know what I mean? And for the same thing again. Now let's do the close-ups. It's like, oh my God. Could anything be more mind-numbingly boring?
Coming from a musical family, and even 65 with 65, 66 with Rubber Soul and Revolver, were you aware of those albums at that age, or were you too young?
All of it, like a ton of bricks. I mean, it's such a cliche. Lukather says it all the time. It's in our house, especially in our household, there was no folk music or Buddy Holly or Elvis, in our household at all. It was Miles Davis, it was Coltrane, maybe some big band stuff. It was jazz and maybe a little bit smattering of classical music, because both of my parents, were in orchestras and stuff like that. But my dad, Miles Davis quintets was the stuff. And then all of a sudden, 64, Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show. We were the stereotypical, all three of us boys started a band the next day with cutout guitars. A neighbor had a jigsaw and cut us out. None of us played guitar. You know what I mean? None of us played guitar, cut us out jigsaws, and we would lip sync. You know what I mean? At our elementary school, we would lip sync to Beatles songs. It was life changing. And I remember even at that age, I think the first one I heard was "She Loves You." And then even at that age, I was just kind of aware of how fleeting, how bands kind of, it seemed like everybody was a one-hit wonder. It seemed to me then, Trini Lopez would have a hit song, and then there's some other random guy would have a hit song. And the fact that "She Love You" was like followed up with "I Want to Hold Your Hand," that these guys could do it. Like they could, where most people would be like lightning had struck and their career just peaked. It struck me at this really young age. Wow, these guys did it, and it's that good. It's as good as that first one that got me so excited. It was like, huh. And all of them, Rubbers, every record that came out, we just devoured. With all the talk about the Beatles, I don't hear people talking about this a lot. I know the fact that John and Paul, the fact that they did everything 50-50, regardless of how much the other one was involved. I know some of that came to bite him in the ass down the line. Paul would have to get permission from Yoko to play Yesterday. You know what I mean? Things like you wouldn't want to even hear about shit like that happening. But on the good side, I know that thing as a songwriter where you're working on a song and you've got 50%, you've got 60, 70, 80% of it. You've got it. You got the title. You got this great hook. You've got this great first couple lyrics. And just that bridge lyric is killing you. It's stopping finishing the song. And we all have egos. We're all human beings. You think, I don't want to bring someone out. This is going to be such a hit song. I want it all for myself. I want this to be my song. And so what do? You either just plow through and get it done, and maybe it's not the best it could be. Dig how if you were Paul McCartney and that was happening, dig who your helper was that could help you bring the song home when you were stuck on that bridge lyric. Dig who his go-to guy. It wasn't going to matter. It wasn't going to affect him financially or as far as the credit went. Hey, John, I'm stuck on this bridge, and dig, the bridge would wind up being lyrically the hippest part of the song.
Yeah.
Life is very short and there's no time. You know what I mean? We could name a million of those. Dig how easily they could go to each other. I'm stuck here. You know what I mean? When it was just, they just needed this much help to finish it. How strong their their go-to guy was.
All of a sudden, you guys were like all those Grammys. Your dad's in the pit, in the orchestra pit. That must have been kind of cool because he probably looking, what the hell? You know who you
My
guys were.
girlfriend now, she just loves that story. That, you know what I mean. And even Mike was had taken Hungate's place, so he was with us. But you know, there's my dad in the pit, like he always was. Oscars, Grammys, whatever. Top session guys, movie guys got that call usually, and you know, he was in the pit again like usual, and here we are getting Grammy after Grammy, and his friends are all going, "Yo, Joe, way to go!" And you know what I mean. All three of us boys are kept going up to the stage. You know, it was great.
Remember, if you want to make a donation to the channel, there's always a PayPal link at the very top of every one of our videos. Subscribe to our channel and click the bell notification so you don't miss anything. Also, comment on our videos. We read all the comments, like them, and share them on social media. It's John Bowden. This is Rock History Music. Take care.